everybody. For those who don't know me, my name is MarshaJane Thompson. I'm the chair of Unison United Left, and I'm also on the Labour Representation Committee, National Committee, and this is a joint fringe sponsor by both those organisations. What we thought we'd do is do something a bit different for a change, because we normally have the fringe meetings and we have very good panels and very good attendances again like we have today, but we have 10 minutes from each platform speaker, and it doesn't give much chance for debate from the floor. And being as we've been sat down and spoken at all week, that people get a bit frustrated, so we thought we'd reverse that and have a question time based on obviously BBC's question time, where we'll go straight to the floor for questions. And then we'll also go back in and get people's responses to what people are saying. So being as it is the first time we're ever doing it, it could be great, but if it gets a bit car crashy in places, just bear with us. I have got 5 questions that were submitted in advance, as we said on the email, but I'm aiming to go for about an hour, so we should hopefully get a couple more in as well. And as I said, I'll be bringing people in from the floor to put their point of view on the questions. Just to introduce the platform, I've got Kingsley Abrams, who's a Labour councillor and also on Unite NEC, and I think this is the 3rd year in a row that the Labour Party are trying to discipline Kingsley for fighting against the cuts. So to the left is Owen Jones, who's author of Chavs and also writes for the Independent now. People would have known of Owen's celebrity status and rising over the last year or so to some very good and completely attacked in the Tory press, almost on a daily basis, and currently for standing up for call centre workers who don't get toilet breaks, obviously. Obviously that's a terrible thing to actually say. But welcome to Owen as well. Leane Wood, who is the leader of Plaid, and she was saying that she got a lot of support from the English Labour Party people to win that, so very good, I think, obviously, for the Labour Party in Wales, that Leane is the leader of Plaid. So and right left is someone who will be familiar to most people in this room. I'm sure Ms. Karen Reissmann, who's on Unison NEC, but obviously speaking here in a personal capacity. She does sterling work. To her left is Romayne, who is convener of the Green Party Trade Union Group, which is also chair of the Coalition of Resistance for People who are on the United campaign to fight against the austerity cuts. So welcome to Romayne. And now that that's over with, I've got the first question was submitted by Steve Ellis, and I can't see him, but I'm hoping he's here. Right, he's right at the back. Fabulous.
Thank you. Now, sorry, I'm going to remember exactly what the question was that I wrote, so give me 1 second and I'll find it.
I could read it out for you.
No, it's fine, I've got it now, thanks, Marsha. In light of the recent election results, what's the future for Greek people, and how can people in Greece and across Europe best resist austerity?
Okay, so I'm going to Owen first.
Well, firstly, comrades, friends, brothers, sisters, really chuffed to be here. I normally try and milk any tenuous link I've got to the audience. I'm from a very proud Unison family. My dad was a senior Unison shop steward and lost his job in the mid-90s under the last Tory government. So I'm carrying on, if you like, fighting the struggle which he tried to fight back in the mid-90s and my mum at the same time. In terms of Greece, look, I was gutted, and I'm sure many people in this room were, by the defeat of Syriza. But the fact I was gutted at all shows just how far things have come. That is a party which just 3 years ago got 4.6% of the vote, and today came within a whisker of taking power. And that should be a source of strength for us, because the tide is turning across Europe. The mood against austerity, the confidence people have to fight back, is growing on a daily basis. We saw it in Greece, we saw it as well in France, where the high priest of austerity got a damn good kicking. And that opens space for us. Let's be clear about what's happening to Greece though. It's the dismemberment of a modern European society. Over half of young people have no job. Homelessness has surged. Hospitals are running out of basic medical supplies. Homelessness, suicide, the biggest indicator, if you like, of despair. The number of people killing themselves has doubled in a country which once had one of the lowest suicide rates in the world. It is an attempt, in order to cough up the money for the banks who plunged us into this crisis, to destroy that society, and people have made it clear that they are fighting back. But if we're going to fight back, what we need to do is to have a coherent alternative. And in a way, I think that's what's been lacking. And it sometimes seems a bit of a kind of talking about that seems like an abstract intellectual exercise. But unless we have a coherent alternative, linking together all of our policies, not just saying clamp down on tax avoidance here, build housing there, to link it together in a way which we can sell to people, package to the people, working people are being hammered by this crisis, people won't have the confidence to fight back. So at the moment, that's what we're starting to do, I think. And for example, I'm working with a think tank, Unite, and other unions, such as GMB and PCS are supporting, called Class, bringing together a lot of academics and economists on the left to forge that alternative. But of course, the main thing is struggle. That's how things change throughout history. It's people organising from below. And the main fear I've got, and it's happened in this country, is the politics of divide and rule. As anger grows, the political and media elite attempt to turn that growing anger, declining living standards, from above, the people who caused the crisis, to your neighbour down the street. And that's what they've done in this country. They've tried to turn the working poor against the unemployed over benefits, the disabled against the able-bodied, again over benefits, and private sector workers against public sector workers over pensions. It's the politics of divide and rule to divert people's anger away from those who caused the crisis. So we have to build unity, we have to link all our struggles together, because to coin a phrase, other than the people at the top, we're all in this together.
Well, I'm delighted to say that Coalition Resistance grouped up with the People's Charter and trade unionists, and we made a delegation, and we were over in Athens in March for a whistle-stop tour. I attended 8 meetings over, really was about 1.5 days, and I can't stop repeating it, but I was in the same room as Alexis Tsipras. I was a guest there. A few of us went to talk to him about the situation and to say what we in Britain do, knowing that Greece was at the front line of austerity and was suffering. And he said it, and Sofia Sakorafa, who I met in Parliament, said it, that the people in Greece feel they are the lab rats of Europe, and that whatever the so-called Troika, made up of the EU, the European Central Bank and the IMF, whatever they think they can get away with the Greek people, with the austerity measures, they will be happy to roll out to other countries, one after the other, Spain, Portugal, Ireland, carry on as we are. We know we've got austerity cuts here, we know they're only at 15%, but it's true from a party, Syriza, a coalition, in actual fact, that won 4.6% in the first election, went up to 16.9% because they said they would reject the terms of the memorandum. And I'll say that I was in the Parliament building when Sofia Sakorafa said to me that this 700-page document came from Europe at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they were expected, ordered, no choice, to have that signed by 9 o'clock in the morning. And the 2 memorandums went through. Now, PASOK was supposedly their socialist government, and I think they were about a 30% high. They've gone down to about 12 now because they thought they were being sensible, they thought they were doing the right thing, and they were signing these agreements. One of them was a 22% cut to the minimum wage, but even a deeper cut to younger people's wages. The pensions, which had been reduced, were reduced again, and with the prices going up, were then suddenly only at half the value of what they'd been a couple of years ago. What I would say is this: Alexis Tsipras, I would say he's one of those people who is very skilled at getting people to work together, and it is really important. We had Len McCluskey last night down at that friend's house, and Tony Benn was there, and what the message everyone was trying to say was, if we on the left cannot work together, they will try and divide and rule. They've done it over very, very many issues, but Alexis Tsipras, he has managed, not with everybody, but with a very, very wide range of people on the left, to pull them together. He started with Synapsismos, which was made up of about 13 different groups, started off from the communists and built and built and built. Syriza now has joined more groups together. They registered as a single party, because if they won, they would have been given an extra 50 seats. They came second, but in a way, that gives them a little bit of time. I was disappointed too. It gives them a little bit of time to get to know each other, to get their structures, to agree, on their constitution, on how they're going forward, to learn to work together, because austerity doesn't work, and New Democracy may have cobbled together some agreement now. It is not going to work. It doesn't even work in terms of neoliberal free marketeering and capitalism. It doesn't work. There will be, their time is about to come, and I will look forward to that.
Thanks. First thing I'd want to say is that I don't think Greece is fundamentally any different from Britain or any of the other countries in Europe at the moment. I think they have exactly the same problems, they're just a little bit further down the road. And I do think that we shouldn't fall for any of the lies about somehow it's to do with their tax system or whatever. It is the fact that we are in an economic crisis, and their solution to that economic crisis is that was caused by the banks and requires constant bailouts of the banks and of the governments that have backed those banks, that the solutions that they keep presenting in terms of those bailouts both increase the debt of governments and therefore increase the interest payments and cripple those governments further, but also the austerity packages that go alongside of them end up crippling that government even more, as they end up with less people in work, less companies making money, less taxes being paid in, less people being able to buy anything, and a downward spiral. So the people who cause the problems are the people who they claim they want to solve the problems, which I always thought was a rather strange idea in the first place. And it seems obvious when we're on the third, fourth, fifth, and I'm sure they would want a sixth and a seventh bailout and a sixth or a seventh austerity package that still wouldn't work, that the solution that they've got hasn't worked. And I think we have to say quite clearly, they have to stop paying the debt, they have to stop paying the interest payments to the European banks and to the other banks, and they have to use the money, and it's a huge amount of money in Greece that they are paying for those debts, to pay for the absolutely desperately needed services that have been deprived to people, that leave people living on the streets and without essential drugs that mean that they will die. And I think when it comes to Syriza, what I would say is what I would give in Britain today to have a 27% vote against the austerity packages that are being proposed by this Tory Lib Dem government and supported only in a bit that the answer is struggle, and I think that's where we have to be optimistic, because there has been fantastic struggle in Greece. There have been 17 general strikes, there's a whole set of occupations, not just of squares but of workplaces, and all sorts of myriad of processes, and that is the thing that will go up and down and will continue. But as long as the answer is being driven by the EU, by the banks and by the speculators, who every time you vote the wrong way seem to charge you even more in interest rate, I think we have to say yes to democracy, yes to people fighting back, and no to unelected banks and speculators thinking that they can carry on getting rich at our expense while we end up dying.
Hello, can I first of all say diolch am y wahoddiad. Thank you very much for the invitation. That was Welsh for me. I'll start by answering the question in terms of hope. I think that there has been some hope given to us by the election of President Hollande in France. He was elected on the platform of taxing the filthy rich and creating jobs, creating an economic stimulus for job creation. And I was disappointed in the results with Greece as well, but I think taking on board what other people have said, things have developed very quickly there and shows potentially what can be done. For me, I think if we're talking about building up the alternative to austerity, that has to be done really at a grassroots level. And I've been having a discussion with some people in Wales about how we can create a practical alternative to austerity in Wales by pushing the Compass Plan B. And if there are ways potentially for people to
come together at a grassroots level and maybe even form cooperatives to create alternative jobs, then there is potentially an alternative there. We're nowhere near in the same place as where Greece are, but in Wales we are suffering disproportionately as a result of the cuts, and that's because we've got a weaker economy, we're more over-reliant on the public sector, and so when cuts to the public sector hit, they hit Wales harder. And we've had the news out today that unemployment statistics for women, for example, in Wales is particularly bad. So although we're nowhere near the same situation as many other countries, we are in a pretty dire situation anyway. And I think for the left, it's quite easy for us all to unite and work out what we're all against. We're all against the war. We're all against benefit cuts. What's harder is for us to all work out what we can unite in favour of. And I'm a big fan of the late, great Raymond Williams, who posed this challenge to us. How can we create a platform that the disparate forces on the left can unite around? And I think that is the challenge for us, really. There are and have been far too many splits on the left in the last few decades, and that's the challenge. How can we build together and unite around a positive programme for change? I produced a document back last year called A Green Print for the Valleys, and the aim of that was to put forward proposals for a job creation programme for a particular part of Wales which has been suffering from poverty over many decades, since the closure of the pits in the 1980s, in fact. And the basics of the Green Print is stimulating the economy so that you would enable the creation of local cooperatives to then carry out a mass house home energy efficiency programme. Every home gets maximised home energy efficiency measures, and that work should be carried out by cooperatives. So there are ideas, and I'm not the only person coming out with ideas in Wales. There are plenty of ideas coming out from progressives. How can we put those together and create that alternative? I'm hoping that we can organise a conference with Compass Cymru in the autumn, where various progressives can come together and work out what positive programme we can put together. So keep an eye out for that, and if it's a success, then surely we'll be happy to share ideas with people in other countries as well.
If you do want to come in, particularly on Greece, then please raise your hand so I know where you are afterwards.
Thank you very much, Chair. My only language is English. I don't speak Welsh, but my children do speak Spanish and French and so on. Can I start by thanking you for the invitation, and also to bring solidarity from United Left within my union, Unite, because we're keen on getting the left organised, and one of the things we want to do for the future is to get the left across the various unions to meet and to have a public meeting. That's a commitment that our National Coordinating Committee of United Left has decided on. So solidarity from United Left. I don't think it's a Greek problem or it's a Greece problem. It's a European problem. It's an international problem. The issue is that cuts and austerity has failed. And what's happening in Greece, if the Tory-led government continue with the direction that they're going, we will have the same problems here. And that's why Unite said right at the beginning, our executive passed a statement saying that we are against all cuts, not the Labour Party position of some cuts and not the others, and not too deep and not too fast and all that rubbish. We oppose all cuts and austerity. We said it right from the beginning. And what's happening now, of course, is that the tide is beginning to turn as people have seen that cuts and austerity have failed. So when I said in Lambeth Council 3 years ago now, since they started throwing me out the Labour group, I said that I'm not voting for cuts. The government had set out, the Tory-led government had set out that 81 billion cuts, remember when they first got elected. Then they asked a council like Lambeth, with such a large black community, working class community, poverty and deprivation. I represent a ward in Brixton that is as poor as any part of the United Kingdom. And yet a Labour council in Lambeth set out on cutting £37 million from the budget. And the leader said, no frontline services will be affected. Councillor Reid. So I opposed it. I voted against it, so I was suspended. And then I continued voting against. They suspended me again. And up until 4 weeks ago, they called me again and suspended me again. Because they said they saw a video of me speaking against cuts outside the town hall. And during the riots last year, I spoke on Sky TV against the cuts and austerity. And they said, oh, you oppose Labour policy. And then they suspended me and they rolled out those silly charges against me. The issue is that whether we're in Greece, whether we're in the United Kingdom, whether we're in Wales, whether we're in Scotland, our position must be we oppose our cuts, oppose austerity. And crucially, in Unite Executive, we also said that we need to set an alternative to what's happening at the moment. And we talk about the Robin Hood tax and tax avoidance, all the millions that they take out of our country, the people who are refusing, those millionaires that are refusing to pay their taxes. We talk about taxing the bankers' bonuses, because they caused the problem in the first place. Not the libraries that I represent on the council, not the youth clubs that I represent. They didn't cause the economic crisis. It's the bankers that caused the crisis. We tax their bonuses. And we also, crucially, right at the beginning, Unite said, we need to talk about growth. We need to talk about investing in infrastructure. You create jobs, people pay taxes, the economy will recover, and that's how we will get out of the recession. But they continue with this austerity. Even now, as we're in a double-dip recession, this government is refusing to change course. So the left need to be united against cuts, and not too deep and too fast. Just leave that rubbish aside. We oppose all cuts. We support the TUC demo on the 20th of March, and we unite against austerity and support growth.